everyone to our episode today of the Uncorked Corner podcast. We are very excited to be welcoming our friend Julia back from Witchcraft Cocktail. You may have remembered from our first time featuring Julia, we were featuring her very first book, and now we are here for book number 2, and it is incredible, and we can't wait to share it with you. But we'll have Julia do a little re-intro as to who you are, what you've been up to, and then give us a little scoop on what the book's all about.
And Bianca, you forgot, this is her third appearance.
That is true.
This is her third. I think she might be our first guest with 3 appearances.
Yes. 2
that's
book segments
awesome.
and 1 cocktail segment. That's right.
Yep.
So,
yeah. It's always a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun talking to you guys. And that Halloween one was a blast too. So little cocktail and candy pairings and all that. But yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, my name is Julia Halina Hadas. I'm from Witchcraft Cocktails, which is the name of the first book, but also my blog where I regularly do recipes that mix up magic and mixology and folklore, taking my bartending experience, working at a distillery and mixing it with my witchcraft experience. So just a blend of different things to make delicious drinks.
So to talk about the new book a bit before we
Yes.
get into the drinks inside of it, what was the inspiration behind doing this book? Because I don't know if you just mentioned it there, but Moon Magic Mixology is the new title. So it's very centric around like the lunar calendar and all that, which I know nothing about. I haven't read the full book cover to cover yet, but I'm sure I'll learn a lot.
A lot of astrology, just warning you.
Yeah. But what was the inspiration on doing the astrology book?
Yeah. So, obviously with Witchcraft Cocktails and a lot of witchcraft practices tend to incorporate the moon. And so after the first book was done, after all of that writing, because you like 2 months to put all this stuff together. And so, you have to start like bumping things up a little bit to get a little bit of an audience. And so I started focusing on actually lunar drinks on my blog, like, oh, it's the Leo moon, what kind of drinks can you do for that? And so after the first book came out, I started talking with my editor and we talked about turning that into its own book. And part of that has to do is like, it's cool to get into the science of it, but like the moon beyond guiding witchcraft practices guides a lot of farming practices, which is, you guys know, is deeply related to the creation of alcohol. But also, the moon controls or has enough influences on our tides. And it's actually debatable that, that the moon played a part in evolution because of the gravitational pull. It allowed the oceans to interact with the land in a way that helped bring evolution about and whatnot. And so, whether or not it can have an effect on smaller bodies of water is still up for debate, but it's very sacred. And so the moon has a connection to water and liquid. And so it's kind of fun to mix the astrology of what the moon is associated with, what the signs are associated with, and put them into a cocktail to kind of represent the power of the moon.
And speaking of cocktails, so I can start drinking mine, let's talk about it. So I wanted to make one from the book. So I read through them all. And as I explained just before this, I went out on a wild goose chase to 3 different stores to find a couple of the ingredients that I wanted. And then I ended up going with one that I already had all the ingredients for at home. But I went with the Twins Creativity Potion. And I believe this one was in the fall cocktail section. Yep, fall lunar libation. So I'm a little out of season here, but it is delicious. And I'm glad I chose it. So this one here has 6 ounces of freshly brewed coffee, hazelnut liqueur, anise liqueur, Irish whiskey, almond milk, walnut bitters, and ground nutmeg. I pulled out all the stops. I did everything. I grounded the nutmeg. I did it all. And it paid off. It's delicious.
Honestly, like, because it's been a while, I've got 70 books in the first, or 70 books, I wish, maybe one day, 70 cocktails in the first book, and then this one, and then my blog, and so sometimes I get all of the drinks confused, but like looking at this again, that just sounds so fucking delicious. Like, hazelnut liqueur is the fucking shit. I have an old fashioned, is it okay to swear on here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Freedom of speech on podcast.
It's been a while. Yeah. I have this drink on my blog that I do with maple. It's an old fashioned basically, but with walnut bitters, hazelnut liqueur, and maple instead of simple syrup. And it is the fucking shit. Mm-hmm. So like coffee with those nutty flavors, a little bit of anise or anise. Oh my God.
Now, I will say I've never been a fan of anise, but I've started gravitating toward it more. First time I had anything with it, absinthe, on the podcast we did with you. I did the espresso martini with the absinthe rinse, and that has that same flavor. I don't know. Is absinthe made from anise?
It has some of those same flavor elements. There's
Definitely
a lot of other things
flavor.
that, yeah.
But I went with Sambuca on this one, and I've never really been a huge fan of it, but I tell you, with everything else mixed in with this, it adds a really good freshness kind of on the back of it that I really like.
It's the right mix. And even before that, we have the pumpkin spice lunar latte, and not to be like a stereotypical white girl, but let me tell you guys, like if you're, because I know you like coffee drinks and stuff, that one was the fucking shit too. Like I guess I get excited about drinks and alcohol. So.
And yes, Bianca, I did use my fancy new coffee maker to make this drink tonight.
I hope so.
So Bianca's been ragging on me. My whole family has, because I bought this really expensive one of those automatic espresso machines, the super automatic espresso machines. And it's been really nice to have it. Click a couple buttons. I had an awesome like espresso cup of coffee, 6 ounces straight into the cup, chilled.
That's great.
And I had my cocktail. Awesome.
I will say that I love this with the first book too, is that you really do break it out seasonally. So for people who want to kind of pair their flavors based on the season, I think that's really fun. Not a lot of books do that. I think that's what makes it a little different. But obviously your books are one of a kind anyway. So they're just so unique to other cocktail books that are on the market. And I think it's just so much fun to be able to kind of familiarize yourself with new concepts, but also to kind of learn as you're reading and as you're going through the cocktails and trying them, what is seasonal for like right now and what you can make with those seasonal ingredients. And a lot of time, I don't think we think about that when we're thinking about cocktails. So that's just one of my favorite parts of it. I'm not drinking a cocktail tonight. I'm drinking lemonade, unfortunately. I can't have anything, but Nick's drinking for me. So he really did go out on a hunt for ingredients. So for everyone listening, it's no joke. He had me on the phone. And he didn't use any of the ingredients. So
that's funny. What drink were you going to make that you got all those ingredients for?
All right. So Bianca and I had a little debate earlier today on whether or not bay leaves are a common thing to have laying around. And I never cook with bay leaves. I cook all the time, but I've never had bay leaves in my house at all. But that was one of them because that was in quite a few. And the other thing, rose water, is in quite a few cocktails in the book. So I didn't really know what I wanted to make yet. So I was like, all right, well, these are in a lot of it and these are in a lot of it. So I'm going to have them because I'm certainly going to be making more out of this as the time comes, especially now that I've been looking a little bit more and I see some of the variations in like the hurricanes and painkillers and stuff. Once we get to that, or the Bahama Mama was one of them. Once we get to that summertime, springtime, it's going to be 60 here the next couple of days. So it'll feel pretty summery for me and I might have to make some of those, but anyway, I wanted to get some of those other ingredients for it.
Rose water is an essential. Most like every bar I've worked at, but I work at craft cocktail bars has rose water. So
I had never had that before either, but the one that I went with that I found Fee Brothers, the same company that makes bitters and stuff. That's it. So
when they have the black walnut bitters,
that's exactly what's
so
in my
good
drink right now.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome. Why did you say about the seasonal thing? Is like what's kind of fun about this is so I think because I'm blending like different worlds of my passions together, I just have a lot of like bunch of ADHD knowledge about shit. And so I put a bunch of astrological information here. And so the cool thing about the seasons is like if it's a certain zodiac season, I'm going to say zodiacal, but I'm not sure if that's a correct term to say. But for example, if it's Aries season, then the new moon is going to be in Aries and the full moon will be in Libra. So it's kind of got that fun, like whatever's opposite in it, is going to be the full moon, and whatever is the same season will be the new moon. And so that allowed me to kind of align the different moons seasonally, knowing that even if you're in the southern hemisphere, it will be, the same 2 moons. You'll still have the same pairing within a zodiac season.
I was pretty unfamiliar with astrology until more recently when my company, we have a couple of people who just are very, you have like those
Yes.
who spearhead it and they're so into it. They're looking up everybody's moons, everyone's signs. They just love it. So it's now all of it sounds so like normal to me because I hear it pretty much weekly. But it is like so interesting to learn about like the different moon phases and like how they affect us as individuals. And I don't know how familiar Nick is, but I feel like it's been trending that more people are really trying to like learn this and kind of understand themselves through astrology and like how it can impact them at any given time. So
to answer your question,
fun.
I am not familiar at all. So
there's a lot to learn.
Fine. So my personal approach with like astrology is because there's like that shit they open up in magazines. It's kind of like bullshit, but anyway, is like, I also have a degree in anthropology. And so myths and symbolism. And I also took like Latin club. I was a nerd in high school and took 4 years of Latin club, like translating Latin text. Of course, I forgot all of it because it's useless unless you're a doctor. But anyway, so all of these like constellations and the planets and beyond the science of them, they have myths and stories that you can find information that helps you resonate with certain ideas in your own life. It's kind of just like archetypal, like Joseph Campbell type stuff. So that's why I like working with astrology in that way of like beyond like, the fortune telling type stuff that can be out there, just more so an opportunity for healing and reflection.
Now, when it comes to the cocktail of the night for you, I know you don't have one in front of you yet, but if you had to pick one, I know I can't ask you to pick your favorite because I know it depends on the mood you're in and what you'd want.
Yeah.
But if you had to pick one right now out of your new book or one that you really remember that's my favorite cocktail in this.
Yeah.
Book, what is it?
Well, so there's a few. So what I would choose to drink right now, it's not, oh my God. Okay. So if we're going to go over like which ones you're going to have to try, you're going to have to try the Moon Mezcalita. If you guys like mezcal, it's the fucking shit. You got agave, lemon, fresh melon in there, nutmeg. I suggest adding a little bit of cayenne and doing cayenne salt rim. And it's just like, oh my God, even for people who don't like mezcal, that's a great one. Lunar Alchemy is color changing, but it does use butterfly pea flower. So that's something that I suggest people get. And then, so as far as what I would probably drink right now, because I'm in Arizona. So like, as of now, previously California, there's like no seasons here other than like monsoon season. So it's just fucking like hot and like not hot, those are the two temperatures. And so, I'm feeling the urge towards spring, even though that's like a month away or so. And so the Sagittarius Moon Fizz would probably be what I'd go with because it's a riff off of a gin fizz. And so you have the element of the egg whites rising above, but there's also cherry and cucumber in there. And it's just so fucking refreshing. Or the New Moon Beginning sake recipe, which is sake cocktail, but also champagne on top. And it's just, those are both like two springtime refreshing recipes that I'd probably want to sip on right now.
I have a sake tasting next week, so I'm gonna have to try that.
That's awesome.
Pretty soon. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm in a whiskey club, but it is expanded far beyond that. And we've started experimenting into other stuff because you buy so many bottles of whiskey, we try so many whiskeys. All right, what else is out there? So one of the people that runs it really wanted to do sake, so we're doing sake.
That's nice.
5-bottle flight of sake, so that's gonna be
wow. That's fun.
Yep. So I'll be taking one of those and making a sake cocktail for sure. Which one is it? What was the name of that one?
The sake. Sorry, 1 second. I have to. New Moon Beginning sake. Yeah.
All right. It's on the list. I've just added 4 cocktails to my list here.
I know. I'm like trying to go over like the moon mulled wine is another one because it's a white mulled wine versus the typical red. And anyway, sorry, I could talk about any cocktail forever. Oh, the summer moon margarita, which uses watermelon and blackberry liqueur, and elderflower. Anyway, so
the good thing is that you can talk about cocktails forever on here because that's what we're here to talk about. So
that's right.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it is endless, but yeah.
But it is fun. The new book, I know you said you have your gripes with the fact that you've gotten some stains in your copy, but I think the cover looks really nice. So it's still new for me. It's fancy. It's a beautiful, beautiful hardcover texture, nice little gold on it. It is a cool book, and it's definitely going to be a cool one. I'm going to put it on my bar card. I'll have to contrast with the original with the black and gold. It'll be night and day book.
I do love that the first one was black and gold and this one's white and gold. I do have to say though, like I have had a bitch of a time trying to take a photo of this book because like if you, it's just you see how the gold, which is nice to like look at, but when you're trying to take a photo, the gold's reflecting it anyway. So I'm always having like, how do I take an Instagram worthy photo that's not, you can't read the text, but
I tried my best to take a photo of this cocktail in the book and I just couldn't do anything. I was looking at your pictures in here, all these professional cocktail pictures, like, geez, nope, I just can't do it justice, but I'm going to try. Bianca,
they hire a photographer and they do a really good job. So
one of them that I saw,
pros are for.
I forgot the name of one of them, but it had the full big ball of ice in it that looked like the moon sticking out of the glass.
Was it a stemmed? The lunar purification.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, that's a nice
video, but there you go, Bianca, so you can see in case you're.
That's awesome.
That was cool looking, but I gotta get a nice ice mold for that.
So you've mentioned a couple of really different ingredients. Yes. Was it the pea berry? And then Nick mentioned that he was out searching for ingredients as well. One of the things that I'm curious about, and Nick and I have kind of collected a whole bunch of different things in our just experiences tasting and making cocktails from different books. And obviously that expands our palate and our bar carts and kind of gives us exposure to new flavors that we can then introduce new people to. But for you, you're doing that all the time. You're very familiar with introducing people to new flavors and kind of trying new flavors yourself and really incorporating them. How are you finding these new flavors and how do you decide what is cocktail worthy?
That's an interesting question. So I think part of it is being in the bar industry. So I have to say also like coming from the Bay Area, like there's tons of shit out there, like it's just a bunch of farms and we've got all kinds of fresh ingredients in the Bay and farmers markets and a bunch of like craft liqueurs. And so people would always be stopping in bars trying to like, sell their liqueur. Oh, here's a taste of something. So that's kind of part of it is just being behind the bar. You get exposed to a lot more stuff because sales reps are trying to sell you things. So that's part of it. And the other part of it is a lot of research, because everything I do is aligned by like story or myth or meaning in some way. And so I do a lot of research to like look at how to express that meaning through different flavors. And, I just come across a bunch of stuff. So
And one thing about different ingredients too, I did notice a lot of the recipes in this book have concoctions and ingredients that you actually reference earlier in the book, so you can make your own mixtures and stuff like that, which I did think is cool.
Yes.
Yep. Like
I have to say on that subject, okay, I was so proud of myself for this one, and maybe it's not that good. I have to make it again soon. Is the violet liqueur recipe. I fucking love violet liqueur. It's the shit. Like you can just put it in anything and it's delicious. And so I actually came up with this violet liqueur recipe that people can make at home in the book. And it was a little complicated just because when people do violet liqueur recipes, a lot of the times, like of the few examples I found online, they're using fresh violets. And like, who the fuck is going to have that? I mean, a select group of people, but that's like at one time, like it's a very seasonal thing. And what you're going to have like a field to pick all of the violets you need for this liqueur. So I had to find a way to work with dried violets. And because when they're dried, they have much more of an herbal flavor compared to the floral flavor that you're going to want. And so I was able to pair it with gin. I think that was the syrup that I put vanilla in, but there is a little bit of butterfly pea flower to give it the color. And it is just delicious liqueur. Like I fucking love it. Like, yes, I've come close to something somewhat resembling what you can buy in stores. So I am a big fan of that recipe.
I had my experience with that too. This past summer, we had a mead company on, and I used some of their raspberry draft mead, and I made a raspberry mint mojito with fresh mint, and it was awesome. And then I was out of the fresh mint I grew in like one drink, and then no more fresh mint for me. But it's the same thing. It's like you have it once and that was okay while it was lasted. I tried that. We had I have one of those aero gardens, and I was growing parsley, I was growing mint, I was growing all this stuff. but you just get so little of it. You use it once. It's like, well, there's the whole plant in one dish. But
I know what you mean. Yeah, for sure.
I wouldn't know the first thing about finding fresh violet, but I know I have grown in my arrow garden. Nick and I are like, we're wannabe farmers over here. It's fine. We had our little home farms. But I was growing lavender, and I feel like it's still growing out there. It's a little slow growing, but I feel like that'll be a fun one for cocktails. I haven't used it in the cocktail quite yet, but.
Do you know what type of lavender? Like, is it French lavender or just kind of the ones that we usually see out and about?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'll have to look at the
just because from the first book, like one of the recipes I did in there, the Venus Spritzer, because I worked for Hangar One Vodka, so I got an early bottle of their rosé vodka, which some other companies have done a rosé vodka now. But like I just went outside, I had French lavender, cucumber, like just fresh garden stuff. We had a bees, back in California, so I had a little bit of honey and was able to mix that with the rosé vodka, and it's just like springtime in a glass.
That sounds so good. I've been craving springtime, everything lately. I just like switched everything out today to the springy colors. I'm just so tired of looking at snow.
We had a taste of it last week. We had 57, 58 degrees, and then it was right back. I woke up this morning, it was 8 degrees again. Like, 8 degrees. I can't take it. You wake up, it's just so cold. You don't want to do anything. Don't even want to get out of bed. Tomorrow it'll be warmer again, and then next week it'll probably be freezing again. We're not going to be out of this cycle until April. So we got another couple months. That's New England. It's fun. It's cold. At least I snowboard. That makes up for it a little bit. It gives you something to do in the winter. But definitely a warm drink season for me. A lot of whiskey. Whiskey's that's it'll keep you going. That's one thing that I wanted to ask about too. So I noticed in some of these couple recipes I saw, you include Scotch in there. And then it's Irish whiskey and stuff. Now, for a whiskey nerd like me, I see that. I'm like, oh, well, what type of Scotch? Because obviously there's such a broad spectrum of whether it's super smoky or not super smoky.
Yes.
So what would you suggest when it comes to getting to certain specific alcohols in here and mixing around with them and playing them around to really change the cocktail based on the type of liquor that you pick?
Yeah. So part of it is like, I always have to remind myself sometimes, because I recently did an event actually at a bar, and there's like the whole thing of like, when you're writing a book, you try and make things appeal to, depending on what you're doing, but given my subject nature, things that are going to appeal to people on a wide variety of scales, but also be beginner friendly. And so I didn't specify in certain areas in the scotches. So for a lot of recipes that I use Scotch, also because, like, to be quite frank, I have a budget when I'm making a book, and I have to try a lot of recipes. So I cannot spend a lot of money on a nice bottle of Scotch, just to have like half of it go down the drain or not taste good. So I was working with blended Scotch for a lot of the recipes, except obviously you get to the painkiller variation, and that you're going to want to have, the classic single malt as a nice little float in there in addition to the blended Scotch.
What were you using as a blended Scotch? Out of curiosity.
I might have to go get it for my cabinet. I don't know if you can wait a second.
It's no big deal. I was just curious. I was just thinking I could try to replicate whatever you were doing a little bit, get an idea. Was it Johnny Walker or no?
Oh, fuck no. Sorry.
No, you're okay. No. Well, I was just all right. So
nothing against Johnny Walker,
like
but
super smoky.
No, I stick away from a lot of popular brand names, to be quite frank. But that's just because they just throw shit into their creations a lot of time. As someone who's worked at a distillery, and nothing about that distillery in particular, but I know a lot of times that a lot of different companies just mix things together or add certain additives, and they're not required to put on their label what they've put in there. So I stick away from a lot of brand names for that reason.
Yeah. I'm very picky when it comes to my whiskey. So
yeah.
That's I'm with you there. I hear you. But
there's obviously a lot in California. So what about in Arizona? Are we seeing a lot of craft cocktail or craft spirit, I should say? Are there a lot of craft spirits that you can use out there? Is it a lot different from going from California to Arizona and like seeing that landscape?
It definitely is. And it depends on where in Arizona you are. Because I've got to tell you, like, there's like, so when I first moved here, and I moved here back in June, so I've been here for some months, but not even an entire year yet. And I originally moved to like, Phoenix, Mesa, Tempe area. And I could find sometimes the things that I was looking for, but not always. And now I'm over in Maricopa. And I gotta tell you, I cannot find a store for my fucking life that has fresh basil. So I had to like get a basil plant, and so it just kind of depends because it is drier out here. And so, but things are so modern that they ship things a lot of places. There are different craft distilleries out here, but it's definitely not as full as it is over in the Bay Area. I just don't think you can really compete with that because you've got like even the whole Spirits Alley in the Bay Area and all these places. Like it's just distillery after distillery. So there's definitely stuff out here, but not as much as in the Bay.
I was definitely spoiled when I was up in Maine too, in the Portland area. The same thing where there's all like it's a huge kind of craft beer, craft drink, and delicious restaurant area. And then we moved back here to Mass, and I'm in an area that's like I got to drive 20 minutes to get to the chain restaurants, and that's that's it. That's all we got.
We still have a good amount in the state, though. I mean. Like, yeah, you're not downtown. I feel like there's a lot downtown. Even like where we are in the North Shore, there's a good amount of breweries, but it's not downtown Boston. Obviously, you're getting a lot more in like the burbs around there. But I feel like we're pretty spoiled in Massachusetts. We got a good amount.
We got
a lot to drive.
You're a lot closer to in a driving distance to good stuff, though.
Yeah, we have a lot of breweries like within very short drive.
So. Yeah, I do have to say there are like some top-notch craft cocktail bars in Arizona, and there are breweries out here too, but it's just not the same, It's like to say there's a lot, and it's like, well, I came from the Bay, where even like got the Devil's Acre in San Francisco, where you can just literally go from high, excellent craft cocktail bar from one to another. It's just different, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some of your favorite? I shouldn't say favorite. What are some of the things right now? So obviously you wrote the book at a different time of the year. What are some of the flavors that you're playing with right now that are kind of your favorite this time of year? So we're in I feel like it's a weird time of year. It's like between winter and spring. And a lot of people are, I want spring, but like you're still kind of in limbo between the 2 months.
Yeah, I will have to say as a reminder, I am in Arizona, so it's just beyond I mean, there's like monsoon season, which is really cool because there's like sudden like flash storms, but like realistically, the temperature is just, like I said, hot and not hot. So you don't see that much difference, at least so far. I haven't noticed tons of difference in produce and whatnot, but what I'm personally working with, like I'm working on a rose liqueur, for example, because especially around this time back in the Bay Area, I have like a little rose garden and they would be blooming right about now. And so I wanted to do some rose flavors. I'm definitely also getting in the spirit of using dried hibiscus, which can be a little complicated to work with when it's not mixed with other ingredients, because hibiscus just has this taste to it. So you generally mix it with other things. So I'm playing around with that a bit as well, just to have like those kind of floral, tropical, since I'm out here in the hot desert flavors.
How do you go about making a liqueur out of something like that?
Yeah, and that's also the reason why I put the liqueur recipes in here. A lot of times, everything I do is just to serve as an example for people of what they can do on their own. So I don't mean for like people to follow anything I do like a Bible, It's just like, here's kind of show the maximum or the minimum of what you can do and switch things out as you like. And so that's part of the reason why I wanted to do liqueur recipes in here, is because really there's a lot of different techniques to do it. And I did a lot of research to see all the different ways people vouch for, and it can depend on the ingredient you're working with, I think, but usually it's either like you make an infusion and then you add sugar or add a syrup, or you can create a syrup and add it to alcohols, two of the ways that I have done it. And it's kind of fun because so beyond the infusion part, you can add unique flavors through the syrup part. So like one way I did it, I think with the blackberry liqueur recipe is like I was cooking with wine and the berries, and then I added the alcohol and let it all sit for a few days. Whereas with the violet liqueur recipe, maybe I'm wrong though. It's been a minute since I've made this. But other recipes, sometimes I'll start with the infusion and then I'll create a syrup. So like the rose liqueur, I might create like a lemon syrup to add, and then I get the bonus flavors of that lemon simple syrup that I'm adding to the rose infusion that I've made. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, and people will vouch for different things, but it's just really about the ingredient and how it's going to express itself best in that situation.
When you're doing the infusion specifically to make a liqueur, do you tend to use more of a neutral base liquor like a vodka, or do you mix around with tequila, rum, whiskey, depending on what you're doing?
Ooh, yeah. So people tend to stick with vodka, and gin. You know what? To be like, I love all alcohol, but I have to be honest, I really love gin. I think it's so versatile, and it's just the way that it blends, especially with herbal ingredients, is pretty great. So those would be the two main ones that I work with. But there's no reason why you couldn't do tequila, or something like that. I would be curious about using more flavorful things like dark rum would probably be a great addition with berries, but I do wonder about like scotches or certain whiskeys, how you would add those into a liqueur. Probably be on something that's more flavorful so it's balanced and doesn't overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because that's something Nick and I were talking about actually earlier today. We were talking about the gin and kind of how it's so different than a lot of other spirits. It just has such a nice, like, I love gin, and we probably talked about that when we spoke before, but I just like love the flavors, and I think it's so different. I think the reason I do like it is because it often does have those floral kind of herbal notes to it. Whereas you don't always get that with other spirits. I've never really preferred like a vodka, and I just think the flavors are just so much more complex than a lot of like really nice gins, and you can do so much with them with cocktails, and I just have so much fun with it. But Nick and I were talking about that actually earlier today, and I think a lot of people are still not like super comfortable using gin, and I feel like that's something that I hope changes. I am like the only person I know that drinks it, so
I've been drinking it more, and that's on the fact that it's so versatile. Like there's such a spectrum of gins. Like there was one that I had the other day. What I like about it is there really isn't a lot of rules. I like when there's not a ton of rules. Like that's something Bianca and I were talking about today with like bourbon. It's like I'm kind of over bourbon just because they're all sort of the same. There's even like the really nice ones and the real cheap ones. Like there isn't too much room. Scotch, there's a huge spectrum. Tequila, depending on what you're doing, there can be a huge spectrum. But gin, it's like I've had some gins that taste like they're a completely different category. It's like pizza and candy. They're so far apart. We had a company on called Farallon Gin. They're out in California, so I'm not sure if you've seen them around there. But they had 3 of them that we tried. One was more of a classic one. One was a New World gin, and then one was called the Holy Wooden Cask, and it was I think it was Madeira, like Spanish casks or something like that it was done in. And it's crazy how different it can be than anything else. I drank that one actually. I was drinking that one the other night, revisit for the first time in a while, so it's fresh in my brain. But it's amazing. And then we had one with a local company out here, actually in Salem, Mass, Deacon Giles. And one of them, I drank it, and it was like drinking like butterscotch and caramel. Like it tasted nothing like what I would expect a gin. Like it completely shocked me because there really wasn't a lot of herbalness to it. So it's just crazy how wide of a variety you can get. Straying from what most people think of is probably drinking like Seagram's or whatever.
Let's be real. Seagram's gin. I mean, you gotta get what you can afford, but it's definitely not the the epitome of what a gin can be. And that's why I kind of like it, is because it's like you're saying, like it's about finding the gin that works for you, because there's such a variety. And then beyond that, it also depends on what drink you're mixing it in, what flavors you're combining it with, because then it's just going to totally transform your whole experience of that. So I do wish people weren't so afraid of gin, because it's the shit, you mix it correctly and it's a delicious drink that can't quite compare to what the other alcohols can offer in that same way.
One of my favorite cocktails to make right now is actually the Vesper Martini from James Bond Casino Royale it's gin, vermouth, and lemon. And it's very, very good. And that's one of my favorite ones to whip up. And you feel a little fancy when you're drinking out of a martini glass, James Bond cocktail. It's a lot of fun. Pretend you're something else, but I have fun with that one. I talk about that one a lot.
I love that. That's a classic. Not a lot of people know about that drink, so props to you.
Movie buff. I mean, Nick knows it all, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
So where do you pull a lot of your, obviously in your book, we kind of, you walk through all that and a lot of the inspirations there, but when you're making a new drink, where do you start with? Are you starting with like, this is the kind of drink that I want to make, and then find the inspiration that kind of goes along with that? Or are you looking at something that's inspiring you, and then that's kind of like sparking you to say, okay, how would this move into a cocktail?
Yeah, it's kind of both. It's a conversation. So obviously when I'm writing a book with a very specific intention like this, it does start with a lot of research just to see. I'll look up the different, okay, I know I need a cocktail for the moon in Libra. So I'm going to look in a bunch of associations for the Libra, for the moon, whatever energies I'm trying to capture for that drink. And I'll put together all of these different ingredients, possibilities, and kind of get some flavors to mind. But there are a lot of times, like when I'm not writing a book per se, that there's this really cool ingredient, like there's prickly pear out here. What does prickly pear represent, and playing with that flavor as well. So it is kind of depends. If it's a book or something, definitely like it starts with more of a lot of research. But when it comes to my blog or just stuff I'm doing in my free time, a lot of it is kind of playing with the ingredients that are there, like that maple syrup old fashioned. Oh my God, I love that one so much. It was like, maple syrup's not something people think about when you put it into a cocktail, but like if you get the right type of maple syrup or even really any maple syrup, and it can really make a drink. So it's a lot of fun to like, oh, I really like this flavor and I'm curious about it, and seeing that it pairs, the heaviness obviously is going to pair with a rum or whiskey. So things like that. Yeah, it's just a back and forth conversation a lot of the times.
I have a fun question for you. I was just looking again at this picture of the glass with the moon ice in it. I have it open
Yes.
here. And I was wondering if you had to guess how many how many varieties of glasses do you have for taking these pictures and making different cocktails at your disposal?
Oh, well, I have to say, so again, the photos in the book I did not take. So that is purely the photographer. I've had people message me before and be like, oh, where'd you get this cup from? And I'm like, but I have a shit ton of glasses because I do it for my blog, and it's just purely like a lot of it for me is going to Goodwill. And I have antique glassware as well. So I imagine that the photographers, I mean, they must have like, my partner probably will complain at some point as the collection continues to grow. So I imagine the photographer team has like at least a pantry full of glassware.
Yeah. It is amazing when I see it. So put it in this glass, put it in this glass. I'm like, who has that glass lying around? Like I said, we just moved. So I went downstairs and I just had to find just a basic highball glass. I had to go digging through boxes to find it. And luckily I had one. But that, and I don't know, I feel like I have a lot, but then I look through these, I'm like, I don't even know what that glass is called.
Yeah, some of these ones yeah, they have some really nice stuff. Even like the syrup glasses that they have. I'm like, shit, I need something like that. These decanters and whatnot. But they might be vases. They kind of do look like vases now that I look at it. So maybe they just get creative with for that.
I definitely have my Glencairns. Those are my number one used glass, my little whiskey glasses. Use those all the time. But that's
I
it
just
when
got
it comes
off
to cocktails.
Yeah, I just got off work, but you keep talking about your whiskeys and stuff. And I'm like, well, once we get off, I might actually have to pour myself a little bit of something.
So all right, now that we're talking whiskey, what is your go-to whiskey if you had to choose? I'll let you pick a bourbon, a scotch, and a rye.
Oh, well, okay. So, I mean, here's the thing is I'm a little bit opinionated about rye, and hopefully I will grow into that flavor a little more. So there's just certain types of rye that I can only really use in cocktails and stuff. But I will have to say Suntory whiskey, obviously. Like, I have a bottle of that we were drinking the other night that is delicious. But I'm also craving, this is a little bougie of me, but from working at Hangar One, I have their Fog Point vodka still. So basically, how with the alcohol creation process, beyond all the creativity that goes into deciding what makes the alcohol and the distillation, what the still is made out of and all of that, there's the water portion that they add. And so a lot of companies will talk about what different water source they use. And Fog Point vodka uses condensed fog water. They put nets around the Bay Area and have this whole process for it. And so it's a little bougie of a bottle. At least this one's no longer available, but I'm craving that a little bit.
And that's a vodka?
Yeah, it's a vodka. So it's not a whiskey, but that's what's on my mind. So
no, that's fine. I was just curious because that's one thing that I have not done a lot of experimenting with different vodkas and craft vodkas and stuff, because I just haven't found there to be a lot of differences. Like vodka to me has sort of been vodka, but I understand, if you're using different water and using different ways to make it, it's going to taste different.
Yeah.
Different base grains, but there's obviously that one, but you said that's hard to find. I know here we're probably not going to get it, but one that's generally available to people, maybe.
Oh, well, so I will say, just for a background on vodka, people have a lot of misconceptions about it. And let's be honest, a lot of the vodka on shelves that people buy, you've got Kettle One, Grey Goose, which I'm not really a fan of, I'll be real. You've just got Sky Vodka, Absolute, and to a certain point, those vodkas are made to be mass produced, so it can be harder when you're getting vodka for a typical party to see the nuances and differences. But if you do a vodka tasting and you line up a bunch of different brands of vodka, you can definitely taste the difference. And that might just be the Polish in me speaking. There's this whole trick for sipping vodka, pretending you're doing yoga. So you breathe in, hold your breath, sip, swallow, and then you exhale out through your mouth. And it helps remove the burn of the vodka that you can actually experience more of the flavor. And so St. George is a great craft distillery that a lot of different stores around the States, at least I found them in a lot of different places, tend to have St. George at this point. They also make a great absinthe and stuff and great gin, but they have a wonderful vodka. Hangar One is a great one to try. I'm not sure what's in stores, the classic, but you can just go to Bevmo or Total Wine and grab a bunch of those different sample ones and try some of the different flavors or get a smaller bottle. But I tend to stick with more craft stuff than mass produced because they're trying to appeal to a crowd to a certain extent.
Yeah, and that's something that I just have to go and try a bunch of them, because I've dug into tequila, I've dug into whiskey, because that's kind of, I don't know, that's where my head goes, that's where my palate likes. But
so you asked me what's widely available. This one, I don't know. When they sent me, I feel so bad for forgetting this. This is a great fucking vodka. It's called Ving Vodka. And they're located in LA. I'm not sure where exactly they're available. I haven't seen them in a lot of stores, but you can order it online a lot of times through Drizzly or something. And they are a great fucking vodka. And they have one of the most unique ones that I have tasted, which is their kale, cucumber, and lemon peel infused. And so I have to say, obviously, if you're someone who doesn't like herbal flavors, I probably, wouldn't, if you don't like kale, you might not like a kale infused vodka. But I love that vodka because you can just add a little bit of soda water or tonic water. I've made cocktails that taste like a fucking spring garden. I put a little bit of rose liqueur in there and lemon and fresh cucumber, and it's just super delicious. But they also have, their normal vodka, which is extremely clean. They're really transparent about their ingredients. So that's another one, but I think you'd have to order that online. I'm not sure if you can find that in a lot of stores in person around the States.
I never would have guessed in a million years, if you asked me to name what would be infused with a vodka, would have named kale. but
Delicious
definitely I'll have to
though.
try it. Yeah, no, that gives me a reason to try that one, just because it's so different.
And I'm sure Bianca, you would love it because I mean, like gin's very herbal, and obviously this isn't a gin, but if you like herbal flavors like gin, this would be the vodka to taste.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of spirits are, or I shouldn't say a lot of spirits, but there are a lot more spirits that are kind of focusing on like the herbal, botanical flavors, including 21 Seeds, which we've kind of turned our dad on to. It's his favorite thing ever. That's a tequila, and they make some like beautiful flavors. I think that it's just like people want to be able to really experience what they're drinking. They want to be able to drink it straight. They want to be able to have it on the rocks. They also want to be able to create cool flavor combinations with it. So I'm always open to trying new things, especially when they have that cool, like different flavor profile as opposed to just like your typical run of the mill vodka or typical gin. And everything's
21 Seeds that Bianca is referring to is cucumber jalapeno.
Yes. What? I haven't even heard of this. Oh my God.
No, it's gotten super popular, at least around here, but aren't they out of California too, Bianca? But they're definitely nationwide by now. They're growing like crazy, but they were actually a podcast guest too. That's how we first found out about them. I have one downstairs. It's a orange infused tequila. Yep. But they have some cool ones. Yeah.
They also
orange infused.
They have I'm trying to remember what the second flavor is. Grapefruit hibiscus.
Oh, that's gonna be gonna be really good. Oh my God. Yeah. Okay, I'm writing this down.
They're really good. It's different, but that's kind of why it's what Nick and I look for, right? We look for spirits that are different because there's so many that they do unique things, and they have you see a lot now infused with like wines or with beers, and like they're doing cool things with other types of spirits, but when you can really pull in these really natural flavors and actually get them to stand out in the product, it's just, you don't see it a lot. So
it creates an experience, I love it. Oh God, now I'm thinking about that grapefruit hibiscus tequila. That must be like a floral paloma, kind of vibe.
I get into trouble whenever I go to a liquor store because I am the type of person that wants to try something new if I see something interesting, and I never finish a bottle. I have so many bottles that I have like barely had any of them. Like I'll have them a couple times, like, wow, that's awesome. Then I'll find something new. And I think a great example of that, something that you can have that's different that you see a flavor on, is a lot of people do this. They'll take a whiskey and they'll finish it in a beer cask or whatever. But Lagavulin, I don't know if you ever had any Lagavulin scotch, you're familiar with that, but they make very, very good scotch. And they had one that they partnered up with Nick Offerman, Ron Swanson from
of course.
Parks and Rec. He's a big Lagavulin fan, I guess. But they partnered up with him and they did a Guinness cask one, which to me, like you see, and there's a lot of them, they're kind of gimmicks. Jameson does a lot of stuff like that. But when I tried this one, and it's a scotch, and it's a delicious scotch, but it also has notes like chocolate and nuts. And it's like the flavors in it are so different from any other scotches, but I love seeing stuff like that. So whenever there's a weird flavor thrown in with something or a different type of finish, I'm always jumping right on it.
Yeah, I'm like, look at everything you're spewing out. You're such an aficionado. Like,
well, with whiskey, it's like I have so many bottles of whiskey down there that I've had a little bit of, just a little bit of. But that's one of the things that I could go down a rabbit hole and talk about all night.
Well, you need to get one of those big cubes. You said you guys don't have big cubes.
I don't put ice with my whiskey.
Not even like a giant single cube? Oh my God.
Room temperature. Add a couple drops of water maybe to open it up. I'm like true whiskey nerd. That's my
okay.
We do have whiskey cubes. Nick might not, but I like to drink most things with at least one ice cube.
Yeah.
So we do have them. Nope. They're not that big though. That is a big ice cube. I don't have molds that big.
Is it that? I don't know.
It's like the size of the glass. I mean,
it's either that or it's a really tiny glass.
I like the medium-sized ones, you know, so it fits like one in there or two in there, but it's not like obviously that big.
Yeah, it isn't.
Never really noticed that
it's
to
only like
be
4 ounces. About that total. So, but
I never really thought that ice cube was that big until you guys started talking about it. I'm kind of curious now.
The other cocktail, now that I'm looking at that, I saw sparkling wine on that particular one. The other cocktail I wanted to make tonight was the Moonlit Psychic, the absinthe with sparkling white wine.
Let me find it. Oh yeah, well so here's a part of the problem in the editing process. This is just so when I try and make stuff again, like I try and make things appealable. So this is actually A Death in the Afternoon. So this is Ernest Hemingway. So this was one of the Ernest Hemingway, ironically, as a writer, was very prolific in cocktails as a drinker in his age, in the years that he was around. So this is a classic Death in the Afternoon, but I was saying in the book that it's particularly great for Scorpio season because it is, first of all, the name in itself, but also the absinthe and champagne and all of that. So yeah, you should try some absinthe drinks if you're interested in that. I know you said that you're not that into it, but
I've got there's just some absinthe. Bianca was shocked today because I was talking about it. She's like, yeah, but who has absinthe? I have 2 bottles of absinthe downstairs, surprisingly enough. I have absinthe ordinaire and I have Grand Absente are the 2 that I have. But yeah, no, that is something that with cocktails I played around with a bit. Like a true Sazerac cocktail with absinthe in it.
Oh yeah.
Putting back on whiskey. That was another thing we did with our whiskey club. We got the rye, Peychaud's, bitters, absinthe, lemon. Oof, amazing. And then delicious. I went to a bar. We were at a bar and I tried to order one. They were like, no, we don't have.
They wouldn't make you a Sazerac?
No. I was bummed.
Sorry. It's just like a classic craft cocktail. So I don't know if it was.
It didn't seem like that crazy of a request.
What kind of bar are you going to, Nick?
I guess not a great way. It was in Boston too. It was like, I don't know.
The bartender was probably just not.
I digress. So I asked for an old fashioned instead, and they gave me like this big watered down glass of ice and.
Maybe they were just a noob.
It wasn't a great experience.
Yeah, I was like to say, it doesn't sound good.
But I do need to mess around more with absinthe though. What else could you recommend for absinthe cocktails?
Let me take a look here and think for a moment. You guys always put me on the spot with all these questions. I'm like, shit, I've been like stuck like working from home and I feel so secluded from all these different things. It's been a while. I'm not sure that I put anything in the book like this, but absinthe beyond, the traditional nutty flavors, like absinthe or anything anise flavored with those same flavors is going to be great again with like coffee. But a lot of those nutty flavors are really good for that, but also can make a good mix for a little bit of like a rye whiskey sour, not too much, but just a little hint of it. And so it just kind of depends on what rye you're working with. They both have that really kind of pronounced flavor that it can work well together. Or before the Cosmic Wisdom Appletini. So the difference with the Appletinis that I work with is I don't like just pure vodka and, green apple schnapps is not really like my thing. So mixing it with a little bit of whiskey or a little bit of rum, and then you can start it with an anise rinse, and it brings just this great aroma of those same kind of like fall harvest flavors.
I think that's going to be the one.
It's that really good, honestly.
Oh, yeah, you're saying like the rye sour. That's basically like the classic Sazerac cocktail right there. Sazerac.
I know, basically.
Yeah,
but it's a whiskey sour instead, a little bit,
But
yeah,
close. But yeah, delicious. I could definitely see that one working. So I got to play around more with that and see what I can do. Like I said, I got 2 bottles of it downstairs, just burning a hole in my liquor cabinet. I need to use it up.
Yeah. And absinthe has some really interesting preparations. Like one of the bars I worked at, we would have like this whole drip system for it, and it's fascinating. All the traditions and lore around absinthe.
I know one of the bottles I got came with the absinthe spoon, special little leaf spoon with all the holes on it.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah. Do you know
you still
anything?
have that, I hope.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know, yeah, I don't throw anything like that. That's right down in my, on my bar with all my little.
Okay, good.
Do you know, could you tell us why they use that special spoon? Because you seem to have dug around with a lot of that type of lore and stuff.
Yeah, it has been a minute. I'm going to be honest. Like, I went on this tour and they taught us all about absinthe. That was years ago. So I don't remember all the specific details, but obviously, like, with absinthe, it has all of this history and lore around people like thinking that it would cause hallucinations and shit, when realistically that had to do with the purity of the absinthe. And a lot of people would add toxins and different, just back then there wasn't as much regulation in how certain things were made, and so there were a lot of like different impurities that they would put into absinthe that would cause the hallucination, because it is very hard to get the theomine or whatever it's called, the chemical that would produce the hallucinations. So there's a lot of lore around that. And I believe, but let me just double check here, it has to do kind of with expressing the purity of the absinthe spoon. Yeah. It's pouring, obviously poured over the spoon. I don't know. I'm going to have to look a little more in depth into that.
Maybe we can do another absinthe episode. We'll dive in deep into a bunch of absinthe cocktails and talk about the lore behind it. That'll be fun.
I feel like I'm leaving you guys short-handed here. I'm like, I should know this.
I put you on the spot.
Yeah, and so it has to do like putting the sugar cube on the spoon and then pouring it through as a way to get like a light sweet taste to it. Something like that.
All right.
I'll do more research and get a better answer. I'm sorry.
Nick will have all the answers tomorrow. I guarantee. Okay. He's going to go and he's going to look it all up because that's what he does.
Let me know, please. I feel ashamed. So.
Well, awesome. So I think, wow, we're coming up on, we've been talking for a while. We've covered like every spirit possible, I think, at this point. And I'm sure we will have you on again because you're one of our favorite people to talk to. We cannot wait to try more cocktails out of this book. I can't wait to try any of the cocktails out of this book.
Yeah.
So I would, before we wrap, I'd love for you to just share for everyone listening where they can get the book and your former book as well, because hey, why not get them both? You're going to get one, just get them both and do it all at the same time. And like we said, even if you don't make cocktails every day, they are beautiful additions to your bookshelf or your bar cart. I keep mine out all the time. So
yeah. So as far as where you can get these, you can get them. It's distributed through Simon & Schuster. So pretty much anywhere, obviously, like, support your local shops. I'm not sure, a lot of small shops tend to keep in stock what people around them have asked for. So you might have to request it because this is a little bit eclectic of a niche. So if it's not like a Barnes & Noble or like a big internet chain or something, you might have to ask and whatnot, but it's great to support local. And yeah, definitely kind of the theme with that is, I think what I love about what I do beyond like the magical and stuff like that is it's kind of showing all the different ways you can make a creative cocktail and put meaning and story into what you're doing, whether or not you're into witchcraft. But yeah, if anyone wants to find me, witchcraftcocktails.com should have the links to wherever to get a book.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for coming back on.
Thank you.
We had a lot of fun. Your publisher's going to hate us because we waited till so long to plug the actual book. But I know we had a lot of fun talking about everything. And we're definitely going to have you back on soon. And maybe we will do an absinthe episode. I think that'll be
fun. Okay, well, on that subject, because absinthe is called the green fairy for its, hallucinogenic myth around it. The summer solstice, a lot of times people work with fairies, or like Beltane, which probably means nothing to either of you, but sorry.
That's what you're here for. So
yes, and so
you just give us a date and we'll line it up and we'll do it.
Let's do some absinthe cocktails. I fucking love it. And then I can be a professional at that point and know what I'm talking about.
Awesome.
Absinthe.
All right, we'll line it up. Well, thank you again for coming on. We hope you
Yeah.
have a great night. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Na zdrowie.